Hello, my pack, my tribe, my people. Welcome to a very special edition of Howling After Dark. This very special Hollywood edition of True Crime. Howling After Dark. Uh, I tried this kind of true crime thing before, and it seemed to do really well. Um, so we're going to be doing it probably like every other week. At least that's the plan. And I wanted to kind of kick things off with something special. So I decided that I would kind of do like the Hollywood edition of True Crime. Um, however, having said that, I'm not going to be talking about Elizabeth Short tonight, the Black Dahlia, mainly because I feel like her case has gotten enough coverage, number one. And number two, I already covered it. So, there's no need to go over it again. So, I'm talking about some others tonight, going into a little bit more detail on a few that I had mentioned before. And, um, kind of coming at it from a different angle, I guess you could say. Um, I've been doing a lot of research, and I found some websites that have a lot of information. And if you're in our chat at tiparesearch.com tonight, say something and I'll give you the link to these sites. They're actually very good. Um, Now, the main one I'm talking about tonight is George Reeves. Um, Now, he had already died before I was even born. Um, actually, about 10 years before I was born, he was already gone. But I remember as a kid watching the original TV show, The Adventures of Superman. And it was fantastic, I thought. For its time, it was an amazing kind of groundbreaking show. Um, because superheroes, even in the 1950s, was still kind of a new concept. The original Superman had only come out like I think like 20 years before that. Was when they released Action Comics and Batman was just starting to come around, really. Um, so a lot of those superheroes weren't really known, and I didn't need them all. I just needed one. But it really struck a chord with me. Um, that show, and I must have watched the show for like a good 10 to 12 years or so. Well, no, probably not quite that long. I remember watching it. I must have been around 4 or 5 years old, and I was absolutely fascinated with it. And then probably when I was like between 10 and 12, I think, I found out that the guy that played Superman had actually been dead long before I was even born. Um, Almost 10 years, actually, to the day. Because I was born in 1969, and he was dead in 1959. So, uh, which I don't know when I found out about it, it really kind of hit me, hard, and it was like one of those things that you never really ever forget. Like for like our children, like when they're you know in their 40s or 50s or whatever, they'll look back and they'll remember, like 9/11, and they'll remember the day like that like Heath Ledger and maybe even like Brittany Murphy died, you know. And it's kind of the same thing for me, even though he was gone already by the time I was born. But like it really hit me hard, and it kind of crushed me. And for the longest time, I would not be into anything at all Superman, because like the whole image for me was just crushed. And because of those experiences, I can only imagine what it must have been like for all the kids in the 50s who kind of like worshiped this guy, because he was like a global icon. Everybody knew him as Superman. Kind of like with my generation, everybody knew Christopher Reeves as Superman. And everybody kind of like worshiped this guy. And the kind of funny thing about it that I learned, much later on, is that like he wasn't really how he seemed to be when the cameras were rolling, I guess you could say. He had like a darker side, or not really a darker side, but more like like everything he seemed to be on the show. In reality, he was the exact opposite. And well, I'll get to that. There's a couple other celebrity spirits that I want to kind of get to first, and I gotta say, the top of my list tonight is absolutely amazing. Uh, she is by far probably one of the most actually mysterious, just all around people. I mean, even if she were alive today, I would find her to be totally mysterious and would just want to know everything about her, because that's just the kind of person she was. Like everything we thought we knew about this woman, we didn't really know, and we're finally, like so many years after her death now, or we're finally starting to get that. Um, Mainly because a lot of new information has started to come to light. But the woman I am talking about, of course, is Norma Jean Baker, also known as Marilyn Monroe. And where the kind of like paranormal side of it comes in, uh, well, here, I'm just going to read you this tidbit from this article. It's on a website called paranormal.about.com. Uh, but this is what it says. Apparently, some movie stars didn't get enough attention from the press and fans while they were alive. Their ghosts keep showing up, perhaps for one last performance. Hollywood is full of glamour, ambition, craziness. Oh, that's true. Sordid tales, even talent. And while ghosts and other tales of the paranormal have always been great movie material, Tinseltown also has its own real-life ghost stories. There are many stars who are ghosts, including Marilyn Monroe, George Reeves, and Ozzie Nelson. And I'll get to Ozzie. And many stars who have seen ghosts, including Nicolas Cage, Keanu Reeves, Richard Dreyfuss, and Dan Aykroyd, among others. Obviously, uh, celebrity ghost stories, say more. Anyways, um, but there isn't a lot on here about Marilyn Monroe, but I happen to know a lot more. So I'm just going to read this little tidbit, and then I'm going to go into what I know. Um, the Hollywood Roosevelt, blah, 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 tongue-tied, sorry, Roosevelt, like the president, Hotel on Hollywood Boulevard is said to be the current residence of several ghosts of popular film stars. Marilyn Monroe, the glamorous and funny star of such pictures as Some Like It Hot and Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, was a frequent guest of the Roosevelt at the height of her popularity, and although she died in her Brentwood home, her image has been on several occasions in a full-length mirror that once hung in her poolside suite. The mirror has been since relocated to the hotel's lower level by the elevators. And I guess people are still reporting her image in this mirror, but this is what this tiny little tidbit about Marilyn Monroe isn't saying, is that her apparition has actually been spotted all over the frickin' hotel. Now to go into the things that I know. Um, when Marilyn Monroe died, they didn't have a cause of death for like the better part of a week, at least. Actually, I think it was closer to two. And a lot of theories have come out about her death. What was it? Suicide? Was it an OD? Was it murder? And I have my own personal theories. But regardless of whatever the case may be, and kind of in defense of the medical examiner at the time, one thing people need to realize is it wasn't like it is now. It's not like they could like take a sample of her blood and run it through a GC, you know, gas chromatograph mass spectrometer, and figure out what's in her blood, at the time of her death. It's not like that back then. Like, they didn't have that type of stuff. We were far more technologically advanced than we were back then. Had she died like today, we would have been able to figure it out like boom. Whether they would have advertised it on the news or not, I don't know. But we would have known for sure, one way or the other, whether she was murdered, what have you. But they didn't have all that stuff back then, and so kind of in the medical examiner's defense, it took that long. In that period of time, that like 2 weeks, that's fast for back then. Like there were cases where you didn't find out cause of death for like a year, unless it was obvious, like like a gunshot or a stabbing or something. Obviously they would know right off what's up, but physically there was no trauma to her body, and it looked like an apparent OD or suicide because there were pills found at the scene. Um, However, I personally don't believe that, and I have my own theories for that. Uh, Chief among them is the whole connection between her and JFK and Jack Ruby, which that's almost another show all by itself. But I will say this: it is a historical fact that Before she became a big star, she worked in this kind of like nightclub, I guess you could say, that was owned by Jack Ruby. She was also dating Jack Ruby at the time. And what's interesting about that is that there have also been allegations that at one point in her career, she was also the mistress of JFK. Whether there's any truth to that allegation or not, I can't say for 100% certainty. But what I can say is if she was, it makes sense. And here's why. Fast forward time to JFK just getting assassinated. Whole world has seen Lee Harvey Oswald get arrested and dragged before the court. He's on his way to the sentencing hearing, I believe it was. It may have been his arraignment. I forget which. I would have to look all that up. Point is they were escorting him to court. And it wasn't like, it was Lee Harvey Oswald walking down the street, and then bam, he's dead. He was being escorted down the street by like an army of fucking cops. Pardon my language. And Jack Ruby walks up and shoots him dead. Okay. Now, here's the connection. Jack Ruby is connected to both Marilyn Monroe and JFK. Now, and why nobody's ever considered this is beyond me. But two things that we know about Jack Ruby is he dated Marilyn Monroe and he had ties to the mob. Specifically, he had ties to Mickey Cohen, who, before I think like 1951, 1952, basically ran LA. I mean, everybody was in his pocket. So, you can kind of form your own opinions from that, but you get where I'm going. So, here's the other thing too, that the other reason I kind of think it was murder in Marilyn's case is because it makes sense for the time. You got to understand that like that kind of thing, it happened all the time back then. It there were constantly murders and cover-ups, and back then it's not like it is now, where there's hardly any way at all you're ever going to get away with murder these days. And just straight out, you're not. Between all the new technology they have, including DNA processing, both strand DNA and mitochondrial, you're not getting away with murder. It's just it doesn't really happen very much. And if it does, it's because you went to extraordinary measures to cover it up. Um, but back then, it was nothing like a whack a guy and then dump his body in the desert. I mean, it happened all the time. And so, what's extraordinary about Marilyn's case is that because she was in the spotlight constantly, they couldn't just take her out to the desert and whack her, obviously. They had to make it look like something else. Or, with the public outcry, people would start asking questions. That's my personal belief. Uh, but in any case, her spirit has been known to haunt the Roosevelt Hotel in Hollywood, which I'm not even certain is still there. or if it is, it may have been turned into something else. But don't quote me either way. I haven't been to Hollywood in forever, so I wouldn't be able to tell you. Um, but regardless, her spirit is seen in that area, we'll say. And also, she's known to haunt her home in dang it, it's right on the tip of Brentwood. Okay, well, moving on. Another one, and this one actually, when I read this today, because I just found this website today. When I read this today, this one actually took me by surprise because I remember watching this guy in like movies and like in there were a couple episodes of the original Twilight Zone that he was in, and so this one did surprise me because I didn't know like any of this stuff like happened, you know. But I'll just read you the thing. Another respected star who died before his time, Montgomery Clift, was a four-time Oscar-nominated actor who is best known for his roles in A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and Judgment at Nuremberg. His ghost has also been seen at the Roosevelt. According to some of the hotel staff, Cliff's spirit haunts room number 928. Cliff stayed in that suite in 1953, pacing back and forth, memorizing his lines for From Here to Eternity, which, if you've never seen that movie, see it. It is amazing. And that takes a lot for me to say that because I do not typically like classic movies. Loud, unexplained noises have been heard coming from the empty suite, and its phone is occasionally found mysteriously off the hook. Perhaps it's fitting that the Hollywood Roosevelt should be the stirring place of celebrity ghosts, since it was the site of the very first Academy Award ceremony in 1929. In fact, the Blossom Ballroom, where the ceremony was held, has an unexplained cold spot, a circular area measuring 30 inches in diameter that remains about 10 degrees colder than the rest of the room. Pretty amazing stuff. Oh, yes. This guy. Oh, my God. Next guy I'm going to talk about. I could talk about this guy from here until the sun rises. And the reason why is, once again, he's one of those people, one of those celebrities that they were long dead before I was even born, but they made an impact on me. And the first time I ever saw this guy perform, because obviously I never got to see him live, but it was actually in a Marx Brothers movie that was playing on TV one night. I was a kid, probably like 7, 8 years old. And what struck me about it is he basically did the same trick that would later claim his life. And of course, I'm talking about Harry Houdini. And the thing about Houdini is it doesn't matter when you were born. You know, if you're alive in this day and age, you know who Houdini was. Even in a peripheral kind of way, even if you've never seen like any old footage of him or read anything about him before, you understand that Houdini is the reason that magicians exist today. It's not rocket science to figure that out. And he was one of the best stage illusionists in the world, not to mention one of the best escape artists ever. So him getting killed performing his own trick, kind of amazing. Um, but anyways, here we go. Houdini's best known as a magician and escape artist, of course, but at the height of his fame, he was also drawn to Hollywood, where he made a handful of silent films from 1919 to 1923, with such titles as The Man from Beyond and Haldane of the Secret Service, which he also directed. The films were not regarded well enough to give him much of a Hollywood career. Houdini's interest in the occult was well known, and although he earned a reputation as a masterful debunker of seances, he earnestly sought contact with those who have passed on to the other side. Shortly before his death, Houdini made a pact with his wife Bess that if he could, he would return and make contact with her from the other side. Perhaps he truly has attempted to return. Some claim to have seen the ghost of the great Houdini walking around in the home he owned on Laurel Canyon Boulevard in the Hollywood Hills. Film historians Laurie Jacobson and Mark Wanamaker, in their book Hollywood Haunted, dispute this story, saying that Houdini most likely never even set foot in the Laurel Canyon mansion he is said to haunt. Well, okay, look. I don't know the people that wrote that book. I don't know Laurie Jacobson. I don't know Mark Wanamaker. I don't really know anything about them. But what I will say is this. Them saying that in their book is absolute bullshit. Absolute. And here's why I can say that. We know for a fact that Houdini owned that house. Whether he ever stayed a night in that house before his death or not is irrelevant. He had bought that house. Verifiable fact. If you don't believe me, go to LA, look at the county records. So, poo-poo on them, I guess. Anyways. Wow, there's absolutely no one in our chat room. Please go to tiparesearch.com, everyone who's listening, and log into our chat. I promise you it will be worth your time. Okay, anyways. Continuing on. This guy, I know the movies, and I don't remember him. Which is weird, because, like, I'm a big history buff. My main area of expertise is, like the 1800s, specifically post-Civil War era. In particular, because I'm absolutely fascinated with, the Wild West and the gunfighters and all that stuff. But I am also pretty well rounded on early Hollywood. And part of the reason for that is because I lived in California for a number of years in San Diego, which is only like a couple hours away from LA. So me not knowing this guy or not remembering him is really weird to me, but here we go. Clifton Webb was a very popular star of the 1940s and 50s, earning 2 Oscar nominations for his roles in Laura, which I don't remember, and The Razor's Edge. Everybody everybody knows the Razor's Edge. They eventually remade it with I think it was Jeff Bridges, but don't quote me on that. He may be best known for his portrayal of Mr. Belvedere in a series of films. It's not too often that, the Mr. Belvedere movies were great. By the way, like Mr. Belvedere Goes to Washington, uh, Mr. Belvedere Goes to Hollywood, etc., etc. Um, but anyways, it's not too often that a ghost haunts the place in which the person is buried, but this seems to be the case for Webb. His ghost has been seen at the Abbey of the Psalms, Hollywood Memorial Cemetery, where his body is interred. But it seems to be a restless spirit. It seems to be a restless spirit, as his ghost has also been encountered at his old home on Rexford Drive in Beverly Hills. Now, I found that to be interesting because it kind of like hints at something I have been saying for a long time, and it's actually one of my biggest pet peeves, by the way, and it's one of the things that. All right, hold on. Give a quick shout out to Barb from Crew of Darkness on Facebook. So I want to give a little shout out to her. Thanks, Barb. Thanks for tuning in. Um, so, anyways, back to what I was saying. One of the things that has always pissed me off is like when you watch those paranormal shows, like whether it's Ghost Adventures or Ghost Hunters or one of the ghost story things or Paranormal Witness or whatever it is, they always refer to spirits as being trapped. And that pisses me off more than just about anything. And the reason why is very simple. You're making an assumption when you say that spirits are trapped. And that's not to say that there aren't such a thing as spirits who are trapped. But it doesn't mean that they all are. In fact, it has been my experience from evidence I've collected and the things I've seen and felt and heard that the majority of spirits that you encounter in any haunted place in the world are where they want to be, period. No room for discussion. I'm not going to discuss it. That's what I believe. That's what I pieced together on my own. People are entitled to believe whatever they want to. It doesn't mean that they're correct. It doesn't mean that I'm correct either, but I believe I am. And saying like kind of blanket terms like that really pisses me off. So yeah. Um, Anyways, moving on. Once again, another lady I have never heard of. Uh, a lady by the name of Thelma Todd. Uh, Thelma Todd was a hot young star in the 1930s, who's featured in a number of hit comedies with the likes of the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, and Buster Keaton. But that all ended in 1935 when Todd was found dead in her car, which was parked above the cafe she owned on the Pacific Coast Highway. Strangely, her death was ruled an accidental suicide, but many suspected murder and cover-up by powerful Hollywood figures. The building that once housed the cafe is now owned by Paulus Productions, and employees have reportedly witnessed the starlet's ghost descending the stairs. Now, what I said I was at the beginning of the show, I was not going to talk about the Dahlia. And I'm not, really. But I do want to mention that I don't know. Maybe it's in my mind, or I don't know. Maybe I'm reading too much into it, or whatever. But I see similarities. I mean, this was 1935, and Elizabeth Short died in the late 40s, I believe 47. And so that's only 12 years, though. I mean, if this were like a serial killer, um, it's definitely not that short of a time for a serial killer in that time period to operate. Um, but that's just speculation on my part. I don't really know her from. I mean, I think I know who she is. If I were to look up a picture of her on Google, I'm pretty sure I would know who she was because I watched the Marx Brothers and Laurel and Hardy and all that stuff. When I was a kid, I was really fascinated by the original comedians. And it's probably no accident that later on in my life, I actually did quite a bit of stand-up comedy myself. So, um, yeah, Barb said in chat that she agrees with me. I believe there is something that keeps a person wanting to stay there but not trapped. Now, once again, I'm not saying that there isn't such a thing as trap spirits, but don't make everything out to be a trap spirit. Just like it pisses me off, especially Paranormal Witness seems to be really bad at this. And I actually kind of like the show. There are times though when I get so pissed off at it, I got to stop watching it and like start watching something else because it seems really bad at this, where like people will see like an orb in a picture and automatically jump to the conclusion that it's evil when they haven't even really confirmed that it's actually an orb yet. You know, and there's been an episode or two where like they did that, and I actually I actually paused it, right at the moment where they show the picture and really examined it and looked at it under, magnification and the whole 9 yards, and it's dust. And they're like jumping to the conclusion that, oh, a demon's in my house. Pisses me off more than anything, I think, just jumping to conclusions without backing it up. And I know we're all guilty of it. I've probably done it a few times myself. But, when you're presenting it to the world and you haven't really done your due diligence, I'm going to drop an F-bomb just to warn you. Um, I really think that you need to have a Coke and a smile and shut the fuck up because you have no idea what you're talking about. That's my personal opinion, but there it is. Um, I do cuss sometimes on the show just to warn any new listeners out there. So if you have children, you might want to put them to bed because, uh, especially when I feel very passionate about something like I just mentioned, I do have a tendency to cuss. And I don't mean to offend anybody, but that's just how it is. So, warning. Uh, Anyways, continuing on. Yeah, so Thelma Todd, I heard the name, of course, but had no idea. Uh, okay. This one is interesting, and this is another guy I don't really know. Like I really don't know that much about this guy. I've heard the name before. I think I read it before, like kind of like a little thing about it because I kind of recognize the name. But yeah, once again, he's one of those Hollywood folks that were far beyond before my time, and I just don't really remember. But evidently, he was pretty famous in his day, and a lot of people still know who he is. Um, Thomas Ince. That's Ince. Ince. is considered one of the visionary pioneers of American movies. He's one of the most respected directors of the silent film era, best known perhaps for his westerns starring William S. Hart. He partnered with other early Hollywood giants such as W. D. Griffith and Max Sennett and founded Culver Studios, which later became MGM. That I did know. Ironically, Ince's death overshadowed his film legacy. He died, and this is a part I really found interesting because I didn't know this. He died aboard William Randolph Hearst. Yes, that's right, Sir William Randolph Hearst yacht in 1924. And although the official record shows the cause of death as heart failure, the hot rumor is that he was shot by Hearst in a fit of jealousy over Hearst's wife, Marion Davies. Now, her I do know. Uh, Ince's ghost, as well as several other ghostly figures, have been seen in the lot that was once Culver Studios. Film crew members have seen the specter of a man matching Ince's description on several occasions. In one instance, when the workers tried to speak to the spirit, it turned and disappeared through a wall. Okay, now here's where my show picks up a little bit. Because we're going to talk about truly one of my favorite bygone era Hollywood characters. And when I say his name, here's immediately what you're going to think, if you know him at all. I realize that he's way before some people's time, but the people in my show probably do know of him, or at least have heard the name. Because when I say this name, you're immediately going to think back to the old black and white TV series, and it was kind of like that era of, oh, everyone's happy. No one ever gets depressed or angry or upset about anything. That never happens. That was kind of what was going on in TV, especially in the area of family comedies like the one this gentleman starred in. And much like the original Leave It to Beaver. And this gentleman, as nice and normal and everything as he seemed to be on, in the public eye, he had some skeletons in the closet. And I'm talking about Ozzie Nelson. Ghosts and hauntings are the last thing that come to mind when you think of the perpetually cheerful Ozzie and Harriet Nelson. The couple with their real-life sons Ricky and David were stars of the long-running sitcom Ozzie and Harriet. Noted for its good-natured, gentle humor, yet poor Ozzie doesn't seem to be as contented in the afterlife. Family members, it is said, have seen Ozzie's ghost in the family's old Hollywood home. And it always appears to be in a somber mood. Perhaps he's unhappy about how another Ozzie and his family have gained notoriety on TV. Okay, whoever wrote that little tidbit didn't do the research. And I don't like to besmirch the dead. So I'm not going to say a whole lot about it. But what I will say is that it shouldn't be too surprising that the happier they appear to be when the TV cameras are rolling, the exact opposite they are when the camera's on. And like I said, I don't want to just besmirch the dead because that's not something I do. Not unless, I happen to be in a confrontation with a very aggressive spirit, and, well, that might be different. But For the purposes of the show, I just don't do that. What I will say is that I have heard rumors, and these are just rumors, mind you, of a lot of drinking, and I'll just leave it at that. So basically, from everything I've heard, he was not a happy person in life as he was, on TV. But, that's only what I've heard. I don't know if there's any truth to it. So there's that disclaimer. Okay, we're coming up on the man of the hour. But before I get to that, there's some others that I want to talk about briefly. Um, Probably most notable uh, out of the next few that I'm actually going to name. Um, Almost everybody in the world has heard of this guy. Even if they don't know his work, uh, because it was quite a while ago, they have at least heard the name at some point because it has been referenced in many, many, many popular modern movies and TV shows. Um, and as far as I could tell you, he died a natural death. I don't know if there's any crime to his story particularly. I just felt like he was worth mentioning to kind of like remind people about this guy because he was amazing. He was part of the silent film era. So we're talking uh, like early 30s and before. Um, and the guy I'm talking about played in quite a few movies in his time. Most notably, he played in a original like black and white silent film, 101 Arabian Nights. Um, he like inspired an entire generation, and I'm talking about Rudolph Valentino. Uh, I don't know much about his death other than obviously he died. But there are claims that he's been seen in the bedroom and in the stables of his old Hollywood home. So if you're ever in the Hollywood area and you get a chance to check out that home, get back to me, let me know. I would love to hear about it. Um, Another actress of note is Jean Harlow. Uh, you know, she was, big in her day too. She was like, Jean Harlow was kind of like the Marilyn Monroe before there was a Marilyn Monroe. And it says here the spirit of this blonde bombshell is said to haunt the bedroom of her home on North Palm Drive. That's in Hollywood, where her husband allegedly used to beat her. Now, I have heard those allegations. I don't know if they're true or not. He's long deceased, and like I said, I don't want to besmirch the dead. Uh, this lady, I know very little about, once again. I do know a little bit. Uh, for obvious reasons, when I read this, you'll know how I know her, which is the same way pretty much everyone knows her. Uh, Mary Pickford. And I'm going to tell you a pretty chilling tale about her in a second. This legend of the silent era actress, writer, and producer was co-founder of United Artists. That's right, a woman co-founded United Artists in the silent film era. Okay, I'm going to say that again. She co-founded United Artists in the silent film era. That is huge because women typically weren't allowed to do that back then. I mean, there was no law against it, but like it really didn't happen. They're really kind of held down by society in a lot of ways. So I find that to be amazing. Anyways, with her husband Douglas Fairbanks. Now I'm pretty sure a lot of you remember that name, and Charlie Chaplin. And if you don't know who Charlie Chaplin is, you need help. Comic buddy writers who lived in the house Pickford once owned saw her ghost appear in a white ruffled dress. That would be awesome to me. You gotta understand something. Like, paranormal has always been a part of my life, but I can't honestly say if I'm so into the paranormal now because of history or if I'm so into history because of the paranormal. But either way, I'm into both, and that would be thrilling to me. That would be like meeting like Sandra Bullock or Jennifer Aniston, like just they walking in my living room, like that would be awesome to me. So, anyways, and of course, I've seen pictures of her, and she was wow, a looker for her day. Um, okay, I just read something in chat. True. Barb said a glass of wine and a smile works too. I'm not sure what that is in reference to, but pretty funny. Uh, and then to what I just said, she said, can go both ways. History and paranormal are so intertwined. Yes, it is. No, it isn't. Um, I do have to disagree with that just a little bit. For me, of course, it's that way. They are intertwined. But for a lot of teams out there that are more like, I guess you could say, provoke oriented, they don't need history at all. They just kind of go into it blind and just, well, let's face it, say a bunch of ignorant shit to try and get responses. And those people kind of piss me off too. Yes, I get very angry about things. I'm very passionate about the paranormal field in general, but I have a very clear cut way of how I think people should go about it, and well, not how they should go about it, but like a code of conduct, I guess you could say, that I think everybody in the field should follow. Um, and these aren't like asinine things either. I mean, like oh my god, uh, I'm about to go on a rant. Okay, one of my very first shows of Howling After Dark that I ever did, and some of you out there are probably going to get pissed off at me for this, and I'd like to apologize ahead of time, um, because I'm not trying to offend anybody, yet at the same time, You got to understand it was the behavior itself that set me off more than the person involved. When I was first trying to get my show together, I was involved with another network, and I'm not going to say their name. Uh, I don't need to, but I was listening to one of their shows, and this poor lady called in. I don't recall her name anymore because I'm forgetful like that. But this poor woman had some things going on in her home she couldn't explain, and it was basically ruining her life. So we're not talking about something fun. In fact, just to let you know what it was like incubus, succubus type of situation going on in her home. And she'd been trying to get people to come in her home and help. And she had contacted Ryan Buell. Let me say that again for all you fans out there of Paranormal State, who I'm about to piss off to no end. Ryan Buell. Somehow she got a hold of him. He goes to her home, doesn't spend more than like 15 minutes in her house. She's outside waiting on her front lawn. He comes out, looks her dead in the eye, and tells her she's crazy. As if that wasn't bad enough. I guess Ryan Buell and Jonathan Zaffis know each other. Um, because I guess Ryan was sharing information with Jonathan Zaffis. And I don't know the man. I've never met him. I have seen like interviews and stuff with him, and he seems nice enough. So I can't say I'm entirely sure that he didn't say something different and it was taken out of context. I don't know. All I know is this behavior pisses me off. But supposedly what happened is Ryan Buell told Jonathan Zaffis all about it when Ryan Buell found out that Jonathan Zaffis was going to visit this woman's home. And Jonathan Zaffis evidently went into her home, didn't spend a lot of time in there either, probably like 10 minutes or so. Comes out, tells the woman she's crazy, and then has the balls to sit there and tell her that he's going to blackball her in Pennsylvania. Oh, that's right. Her home's in Pennsylvania. Blackball her in Pennsylvania, and no group will ever come talk to her again. Okay, first of all, I don't care if you're doing this for 20 years. I don't care if you've been doing this for 50 years or 100 years or a gazillion years. I don't care how long you've been doing it. I don't care how well known you are or how famous you are or how wealthy you are. Nobody has the right to blackball anybody from a paranormal investigation. Ever. Period. End of discussion. That's first of all. Second of all, you can get pissed off at me if you want to, and I hope that you don't, because I do love my listeners. But understand what I'm talking about is the behavior, not necessarily the people. Okay? Nobody should ever, ever, ever tell a client that they're crazy. Because here's the facts. And here's where to me, let me just say, if there's any truth to that story at all, to me, this is where basically Ryan Buell and Jonathan Zappis are taking a big shit on the rest of us. Because as a paranormal group, everything you do affects the entire paranormal community. And what I mean by that is this. This woman could not get anyone else to come to her home for the longest time. It wasn't until she called into this radio show that someone came... Oh, sorry, got the hiccups. Someone came out and took care of this problem for her. But what I will tell you is this. I never got to do my show on that particular network. But Josh and Brett took me in on Utah Para Radio, which was the precursor to this network. And I was really grateful for that, but at the same time, I had to warn them off the bat. I don't hold anything back. I'm a very opinionated guy. And you can think I'm an asshole or whatever, but I hope you don't. I hope you have enough, well, I don't want to say sense, but I hope you are able to form your own opinions one way or the other. And I hope that you can appreciate what I'm saying, even if you don't agree with it. Because the fact of the matter is we have to be so careful how we act in the paranormal community. Because, like with this lady, if that just happened to her, and let's say I'm the next guy that wants to come investigate her home, she's not going to look at me the same as she would have otherwise. She's not going to have any trust in me at all to do anything. And that is wrong. Oh, my God. Which reminds me. I saw something that pissed me off to no end. Those two supposed paranormal guys that burnt down that place. Oh, my God, they should be put in front of a wall and shot. I'm not kidding. They really should. They should be lined up and shot. They burned down a haunted location. I don't know, some jerk-offs. I don't know. You could probably find the story about it online somewhere. And I don't want to get into that whole thing because I'm just going to rant all freaking night off that. Which, isn't what tonight's show is supposed to be about. But, there it is. God. Seriously, don't. All I'm going to say is this, okay? Look, I'm not pointing fingers at any one person, but those two guys should have definitely been shot, number one. And number two, it just goes to prove that some people should have been swallowed at birth. But anyways, I digress. Okay, now I have two different articles that I pulled up for the star of tonight's show, I guess you could say, Mr. George Reeves. And the reason why I really kind of want to highlight this guy, like I said before, is because he had such a profound effect on me even after his death. Because I was born after he had already died. So I'm going to read this first one, which is really kind of short. But here we go. From 1953 to 1957, George Reeves was TV Superman. Reeves had been around Hollywood for a while, playing bit parts in such films as Gone with the Wind and dozens of B movies. But it was the adventures of Superman on TV that brought him fame. Reeves died of a gunshot at his home in 1959. The official cause of death was suicide, but that conclusion has been hotly disputed, with some believing that Reeves was murdered, myself included. Whether it was suicide or murder, Reeves' ghost has been seen in the Beverly Hills home. A couple claims to have seen the ghost of Reeves decked out in a Superman costume, materialized in the bedroom where he died. Oh my God. I'm sorry. Just a funny thought. Just reading that popped into my head. How messed up would it be? Like, you are in your room with your significant other, and you're getting intimate, and all of a sudden, poof, there's George Reeves as Superman standing at the foot of your bed. I don't know. I just thought that was funny. Anyways, continuing on. Others believe that Reeves succumbed to the Superman curse, in which those associated with the fictional character over the years allegedly have met with disaster or death. But is there really a curse? I would have to say no. Not necessarily. Because look, there have been a lot of people that played the character of Superman. Now, granted, the two most notable probably are George Reeves and Christopher Reeve, who, both had tragic moments. One that led to a death, one that led to paralyzation. But that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the whole Superman thing. Because there have been others that have played Superman that are doing just fine. Trust me. Tom Welling from the TV show Smallville, for example. Granted, he's not really doing much in the way of acting as far as I know, but he's pretty well off. He does do stuff in Hollywood. The gentleman who played Superman in Man of Steel, he's doing great. Dean Cain, had huge commercial success and, followed by a bunch of B movies. But, he's obviously doing fine because he's still around. He actually directs quite a bit now. So I don't necessarily buy that. Anyways, going to the second article. This one is amazing because this is pretty long, and it actually goes into the whole haunting case of George Reeves. But I want to read the first part first because it actually it goes into more of the historical fact about the actual case, which I, of course, am absolutely fascinated with, and I hope you are too. Let's see, just lost my place. Okay. One of the spookiest stories of a celebrity ghost involves the alleged entity of actor George Reeves. Best known to a generation of pre-adolescent baby boomers for playing the Man of Steel on TV's Adventures of Superman throughout the 1950s, and whose dark and mysterious tale was dramatized in the 2006 film Hollywoodland. For those of you that have not seen Hollywoodland, I highly recommend it. The most negative thing I could possibly say about that movie is that Ben Affleck plays George Reeves. And some people like Affleck, some don't. I'm not his biggest fan, but I did actually like that movie. So, but anyways, although charming and likable, Reeves was also naughtier than his clean-cut TV alter ego, and enjoyed all the illicit perks of the Hollywood nightlife before being found shot in the head in the bedroom of his modest Benedict Canyon home. And they even give the address here for people who want to check it out. It's 1579 Benedict Canyon Drive in Los Angeles in 1959. Los Angeles police ultimately ruled Reeves' death as a suicide and blamed it on his inability to get an acting job playing anything other than the caped superhero. The cops glossed over the fact that Reeves was launching a renewed career as a TV director and dodged the fact that the actor's longtime acquaintance who bought the Benedict Canyon home for him was insanely jealous after Reeves dumped her for another woman. She was married to a powerful studio insider with connections to both the police and organized crime, who quietly cleaned things up when showbiz types landed in serious trouble. Then there was the lovely young club-hopping socialite Reeves planned to marry, whose account of the night Reeves died had more holes in it than the actor did by the end of the evening. Whether whether suicide or murder, all the unanswered questions may have left one very restless spirit in Benedict Canyon. In 1969, a decade after Reeves' death, the year of my birth, rumors circulated about some unusual happenings at the former Superman's home. But his lover, Tony Mannix, who inherited it from her ex-lover, had struggled to keep it rented for years and refused to discuss it. The renters revealed that one night while entertaining guests in the living room, they heard noises. The bedroom, Reeves' bedroom, previously neat and orderly, was a mess. Linens from off the bed, clothes strewn around. They straightened the room and returned downstairs to find that all the drinks on the coffee tables had been moved to the kitchen. Another time, the couple's German shepherd barked at the bedroom door furiously, then suddenly cowered and slunk away as the tenants peeked inside and discovered that the bed had been moved across the room. The last talk came around 3 a.m. one summer morning. Hold on. Sorry, had to drink. My mouth was dry. The last straw came around 3 a.m. one summer morning when the apparent ghost of Reeves, dressed in his TV Superman costume, appeared in the living room. Within the hour, the tenants had moved out. Daily Planet editor Perry White's oft-quoted exclamation, "Great Caesar's ghost might now be modified as seen the Roman emperor for the last son of Krypton." Actor George Reeves died at 1:59 on June 16, 1959. Not the comic book character, of course, but the man who personified the real Superman for an entire generation of television fans. Even though the initial coroner's report listed Reeves' death as an indicated suicide, after more than 4 decades, there are many who do not believe that he killed himself. Ding, ding, ding. The death remains an unsolved mystery. Could this be why ghostly phenomena has been reported at the former Reeves house ever since? Many believe that the ghostly appearance by the actor lend credence to the idea that he was murdered. Over the years, occupants of the house have been plagued by not only the sound of a single gunshot that echoes in the darkness, but strange lights and even the apparition of George Reeves. After Reeves' death, realtors attempted to sell the house to settle the actor's estate. Unfortunately, though, they had trouble. Occupants would not stay long because they would report inexplicable noises in the upstairs bedroom where George had been killed. When they would go to investigate the sound, they would find the room was not as they had left it. Often the bedding would be torn off, clothing would be strewn about, and some reported the ominous odor of gunpowder in the air. One tenant also reported that his German Shepherd would stand in the doorway of the room and would bark furiously as though he could see something his owners could not. There is also documentation of an extraordinary occurrence when two, not one, two Los Angeles sheriffs were assigned to watch the house after neighbors reported hearing screams, gunshots, and lights going on and off during the night. New occupants moved out quickly, becoming completely unnerved after encountering Reeves' ghost, decked out in his Superman costume. The first couple who spotted him were not the first, nor the last to see him either. Many later residents saw him too, and one couple became so frightened that they moved out of the house the same night. Later, the ghost was even reported on the front lawn by neighboring residents. In the 1980s, while the house was being used as a set for a television show, this is where it gets good. Hold on one sec. Okay. In the 1980s, while the house was being used as a set for a television show, the ghost made another startling appearance. He was seen by several of the actors and crew members before abruptly vanishing, creating yet another mystery in this strange and convoluted case. Now, I'm going to say some things that are probably going to be a little shocking to some people. And once again, understand, I'm not trying to talk ill of the dead at all. I'm just stating what I've heard and what I know. There were allegations of how shall I say, sexual conquests. There were also allegations that George Reeves' girlfriend, Tony Mannix, took part in sexual escapades. I don't know if there's any truth to that. I'm just repeating what I heard. However, I will say that it would not be entirely surprising given the Hollywood of the time. It actually happened quite a bit. Some believe that's actually kind of what got Elizabeth Short, the Black Dahlia, in trouble, in part. Obviously, whoever killed her was a complete psychopath. Um, I had also heard allegations, and once again, not trying to talk ill the dead, just repeating what I've heard and actually read, because a lot of these allegations actually came from the newspapers and news stories themselves. Allegedly, there were rumors that some of his conquests were other men. Uh, Once again, I don't know if that's true. Just repeating what I heard. but it would kind of make sense. Um, there is one other person that I do want to talk about tonight, but I'm kind of saving that for just a little bit. And the reason why is, well, because, well, I don't quite know how to put this. He had such an impact on me when I was a kid, much like George Reese did, but for different reasons. That it shaped quite a bit of my life, actually. Um, and for those that know me, it's probably not going to be that big of a surprise because I'm kind of a quiet dude, but when I talk, what comes out has a tendency to be funny, especially when I rant. I have people that tune into my show sometimes just hoping that I'm going to rant about something because I can get pretty funny about it. Because, well, let's face facts, I say some pretty outlandish crap from time to time, um, especially when I'm fired up about something. But here, I'm going to pull up the thing. Let's see. Da, da, da. 1 second, folks. I'm looking for this one thing. I thought I had it bookmarked, but and of course it's going to be a pain in my butt. Let's see. Let's try this way. I think this is it. Okay. Yeah. When I was a kid, and, and as I mentioned before earlier in the show, I actually did stand-up comedy, uh, actually for quite a few years. And in my life, I'm more of a serious kind of guy. Um, but when I'm in that mood, I'm a pretty funny guy. Uh, so this guy in his show were definitely a big influence on me. From childhood because they were funny. And he he kind of helped shape that part of me, that humorous side, I guess you could say. This is not the one I was looking for. Go back real quick. But the guy I'm talking about was the star of a TV show that I'm quite sure that even those that weren't alive in that time have probably heard of this show. And if you haven't, you really need to look into the show and find old episodes and watch it because it's hilarious. It really is. It is one of the funniest shows ever on TV. And the guy I'm talking about was the star of the show, and for good reason because he was funny. I mean, he had a very tough life in a way, and I'll get into that in a second. But the guy I'm talking about, his name was Bob Crane, and he was the star of Hogan's Heroes. One of his co-stars, Richard Dawson, for years was the host of Family Feud. Uh, and he finally passed away not that long ago, just a few years, I guess. As and everybody in that show has since passed on, but Bob Crane really had a profound effect in, I guess you could say, my development as a comic, and speaking of the whole stand-up comedian thing, by the way, I just want to say it's really ironic that uh, I believe it's Paranormal Entertainment Talk Show, which is I don't know what our Tuesday night show, um, which hasn't been on for a while for reasons out of our control. But there was a guest on there named Marcus the Comedian, and Marcus the Comedian was the runner-up of season 6 of Last Comic Standing, and all around funny guy. But he's also a ghost hunter, and he makes a web series called Ghost Hopping, and he actually inspired me to do my web series. And but he is a stand-up comic. That's what he does for a living now. And I haven't done stand-up comedy for actually quite a long time, but I thought that was worth mentioning. Anyways, Bob Crane was the funniest guy. Not only was he on Hogan's Heroes, I remember him before his death being in episodes of the Hollywood Squares, and he was funny, by far the funniest dude there. And anyways, I do know that his home was haunted, and I want to go into the case though about him. Because there were a couple things that came out when he died that they didn't crush me. I didn't really care, but it did kind of affect me in kind of a profound way because they were things that I was a kid at the time. I didn't need to know this stuff about him. But uh, Robert Edward Crane was born July 13th, 1928, and he died June 29th, 1978. He was an actor, and he had worked as a disc jockey. He began his career as a disc jockey in New York and Connecticut before moving to Los Angeles, where he hosted the #1 rated morning show in the early 60s. He moved into acting. He's best known for his performance as Colonel Robert E. Hogan in the CBS sitcom Hogan's Heroes. Uh, the series aired from 1965 to 1971, and Crane received two Primetime Emmy Award nominations for his work on the series, which was at that time unheard of for a comedian because they didn't really have a best comedy like section of the Emmys. That didn't exist back then. You know, it was very kind of straightforward: best actor, best TV series, best movie, so on and so forth. Um, After Hogan's Heroes ended, Crane's career declined. He became frustrated with the few roles he was being offered and began doing dinner theater. In 1975, he returned to television in the NBC series The Bob Crane Show. The series received poor ratings and was canceled after 13 weeks. Afterwards, Crane returned to performing in dinner theaters and also appeared in occasional guest spots on television. Which include, of course, the Hollywood Squares, as I mentioned. While on tour for his play Beginner's Luck in June 1978, Crane was found bludgeoned to death in his Scottsdale apartment, a murder that remains officially unsolved. Let's see. In 1949, Crane married his high school sweetheart, Ann Terzian. They had 3 children: Robert, David, Deborah Ann, and Karen Leslie. The couple divorced in 1970. Later that year, Crane married his Hogan's Heroes co-star Sigrid Valdis on the set of the series. They had a son, Scotty. Valdis and Crane separated in 1977, but reportedly reconciled shortly before his death. Crane frequently videotaped and photographed his own sexual escapades. During the run of Hogan's Heroes, Richard Dawson introduced Crane to John Henry Carpenter, not to be confused with the director and writer John Carpenter, a regional sales manager for Sony Electronics who often helped famous clients with their video equipment. The two men struck up a friendship and began going to bars together. Crane attracted women due to his celebrity status and introduced Carpenter as his manager. Later, they would videotape their sexual encounters, while Crane's son Robert later insisted that all of the women were aware of the videotaping and considered to it. Some, according to one source, had no idea that they had been filmed until informed by Scottsdale police after Crane's murder. Carpenter later became national sales manager at Akai, A-K-A-I, and arranged his business trip to coincide with Crane's dinner theater touring schedule so that the two could continue seducing and videotaping women. At some point, however, the friendship began to deteriorate. In June 1978, Crane was living in Winfield Place Apartments in Scottsdale, Arizona, while appearing in Beginner's Luck at the Windmill Dinner Theater. On the afternoon of June 29th, Crane's co-star Victoria Ann Berry found his body in his apartment after he failed to show up for a lunch meeting. Crane had been bludgeoned to death with a weapon that was never found, though investigators believed it to be a camera tripod. An electrical cord had been tied around his neck. Crane's funeral was held on July 5th at St. Paul the Apostle Catholic Church in Westwood. An estimated 200 family members and friends attended, including Patty Duke, John Aston, and Carol O'Connor. Pallbearers included Hogan Heroes producer Edward Feldman, co-stars Larry Hovis and Robert Clary, and Crane's eldest son, Robert Crane, was in, Crane's eldest son, Robert Crane, was interred in Oakwood Memorial Park in Chatsworth, California. More than 20 years after his death, Crane's widow, Sigrid Valdez, had his remains exhumed and transported approximately 25 miles southeast to Westwood Village Memorial Park in Westwood. After her death from lung cancer in 2007, Valdez was buried next to him. Here's where it gets messed up. Investigation. According to an episode of A&E's Cold Case Files, police officers at the crime scene noted that Carpenter called the apartment several times and did not seem surprised that the police were there. This is his former partner who helped him film all these sexual conquests. Noted that Carpenter called the apartment several times and did not seem surprised that the police were there, which raised suspicions. Carpenter's rental car was impounded and searched. Several bloody smears were found that matched Crane's blood type. DNA testing was not available at the time. Due to insufficient evidence, Maricopa County Attorney Charles F. Hyder declined to file charges. Murder case reopened. In 1990, the Maricopa County Attorney reopened Crane's murder case. Investigators re-examined and retested the evidence found in June 1978. Although DNA testing of the blood found in Carpenter's rental car was inconclusive, Detective Jim Raines discovered an evidence photograph of the car's interior that appeared to show a piece of brain tissue. The tissue samples that had been found in the Carpenter's car the day after Crane's murder had been lost, but an Arizona judge ruled that the new evidence was admissible. In June 1992, Carpenter was arrested and charged with Crane's murder. At Carpenter's 1994 trial, Crane's eldest son, Robert, testified that in the weeks before his father's death, Crane had repeatedly expressed a desire to sever his friendship with Carpenter. Carpenter had become a hanger-on, he said, and a nuisance to the point of being obnoxious. He testified that Crane called Carpenter the night before the murder and ended their friendship. So, here's the part they haven't said. There were allegations of a homosexual relationship between Bob Crane and Carpenter that were brought out in the news, which, for an impressionable young guy such as myself, because I was only like 4, maybe 5 years old. No, I didn't understand what was going on, and but I remember that news story to this day, and how crushed I was when they showed his picture on the news. It profoundly affected me. And I know I'm not the only one, but here's the paranormal aspect of this case. Because I know that he's been seen haunting that apartment building even to this day. But that's not where this article is focusing. And this is why I find it to be a little bit more interesting. And the title of the article is Who Haunts CBS Columbia Square? CBS Columbia Square is thought haunted by the ghost of a disc jockey and actor Bob Crane, who took on the role of Colonel Robert Hogan on the TV show Hogan's Heroes. His stint on the show lasted from 1965 to 1971, but his life didn't fare so well when it was cut short by murder. When researching the end of this comedic performer, an assortment of lurid and curious circumstances and details arise. During this time with Hogan's Heroes, Crane met up with a man by the name of John Henry Carpenter. Once again, not to be confused with John Carpenter, the producer-director. Okay, so different Carpenter. Um, John Henry Carpenter, he was a whiz in the electronic department who also had a hand in creating the VCR. Yeah, the guy who helped create the VCR, murderer. Um, so, anyways, before Crane met up with Carpenter, he was a God-fearing man who never drank. This all changed when this new acquaintance entered his life. Crane soon changed, and he was having an undeterminable amount of sexual escapades, becoming more and more addicted to sex. The sexual conquests he tackled were alarming. What made this all the more disturbing was the fact that Carpenter and he filmed these orgies with the latest in technology for that time. Carpenter supplied this piece of the puzzle. Crane spent many years spiraling down career darkness with each party he and Carpenter engaged in. It is believed that Crane ended their friendship by making a phone call in the middle of the night. The next day, he was dead. Yeah, and it just goes on to repeat most of it. But supposedly, he haunts CBS Columbia Square, which, for those that don't know, that is some like main CBS studio. Like, so, big deal. The ghost of Bob Crane has been spotted by various witnesses at the CBS Columbia studios, along with the chief executive of CBS, William S. Paley, who passed away in 1990 at a ripe old age. There is no mystery or sordid tale to sort out in his death. He simply succumbed to old age. Since Paley was responsible for building CBS from a small radio network to one of the most recognized television stations in the U.S., there's no wonder that his ghost has been spotted about the studios, along with Bob Crane, who has been seen by several people. He's even been reported in his, costume for the TV show Hogan's Heroes. With that leather bomber jacket and a little captain's hat. People have reported seeing him there in that uniform, as well as there have been a few reports of seeing an apparition of Bob in a, like street clothes of the time, which would have basically been a suit. Barb just said in a chat, Hogan's Heroes, great show. Remember watching it with my dad. I know nothing. I see nothing. Yeah, great show. Okay, going back to something that I had mentioned before. I promised you I was going to tell you a disturbing tale. And I like to deliver on my promises. Thelma Todd. Thelma Todd, if you've been listening, was She was a young star in the 1930s. She was featured in a number of hit comedies with the likes of the Marx Brothers, Laurel and Hardy, Buster Keaton. Uh, Two of my early favorite comedians, Abbott and Costello. Um, and she was found dead in her car, uh, which was parked above the cafe she owned on the Pacific Coast Highway. Now, here's the disturbing tale. And I may be connecting some dots for you all tonight, so pay attention. For those of you, okay, Barb just asked me a question. Do you think some of these sightings could be residual? Yes and no. And I'll tell you why I say that. And I have discussed this on my show before, so since you're kind of new, Barb, I'm just kind of catching you up, I guess you could say. It is my belief that every haunting is both residual and intelligent. I think if you were to catch a spirit during the right time of day, you would get intelligent responses from it. But I also think that if you caught it at a different time of the day, it would be residual. I think they're all both. That's just my personal theory, though people are entitled to think whatever they want. However, continuing on. Uh, so, connecting the dots for you a little bit here. Thelma Todd, as I stated before, she was found dead in her car. Many people believe it was a murder. It was officially ruled an accidental suicide, which, let's face it, if you actually read the case files of this, it smells like a cover-up. Anyways, for those of you that have watched my ghost story, you may remember this episode. And the reason I'm going to bring it up is because it's almost a direct example of what I'm talking about. So in this episode, and I don't remember which number episode it was. It was in the earlier seasons. That's all I can tell you. I don't remember if it was 1 or 2 or 3 or whatever. But I'm pretty sure if you've seen it, you will definitely remember it. In this episode, there was a group of teenagers. One of them was this girl, and then there was this Asian guy, and then this black kid, and I think the other one was a black kid too, or a white kid. I don't remember. But there were 4 teenagers basically, and they decide one night that they're going to go hang out up at the Hollywood sign, which, if any of you have ever been to Hollywood, you know that you can't really get up to the Hollywood sign. It is all fenced in, no trespassing, and they pretty much patrol that area pretty well. Not to say that it hasn't been done, but like if you've ever seen the movie Friends with Benefits with Justin Timberlake and uh, what's her name? The really pretty dark haired girl from that '70s show, who I'm having a brain fart on her name. But anyways, they made a movie called Friend with Benefits, and there's this one scene where they're on the Hollywood sign, and he's too scared of heights to climb down, and they end up lifting him by chopper off of the Hollywood. Well, they actually patrol that. They fly over that pretty regularly with choppers, and there's always cars going up there. But it has been known to happen that people will go up there and sneak in, and under the cover of darkness, you'll never see them. because the area below the sign is actually very wooded area. But anyways, these four teenagers like climb the fence, um, and they hike their way up to the Hollywood sign, and they're up there having a grand old time, you know, drinking beers or smoking pot or whatever it is the young kids do these days, and just having a good old time and chilling out and looking at the lights of the city and whatnot. And first, I don't know, I don't remember if they got scared off or you know they just decided to leave or whatever. But anyways, for whatever reason, they start to leave and they're going down this path, and all of a sudden they see this woman, and she's wearing like 1920s 1930s style dress, and her face looks weird. And like the way that they showed it on this episode of My Ghost Story, she kind of looked like a zombie, to be honest. And anyways, this zombie looking kind of ghost starts chasing them, and they all get down to the bottom of the hill, and the three boy. Oh, thank you. Barb just said her the actress's name I was thinking of, Mia Kunis, who is awesome. She's really funny, actually. Anyways, so they get down to the bottom, and the three boys, jump over this fence, and two of them get in their car and they take off, and the one other one who used to be like her best friend, I guess, uh, was about to jump in the car and take off, and she starts screaming because she doesn't super freaks out on heights and can't climb this fence by herself. She needs help. And so she tries to, go through the fence like she did when they got there, because the guys had pulled the fence apart in this one section and she could fit through. But now she's trying to do it herself and she's stuck. And this spirit is coming right at her, and it's all super scary and everything. And they her friend does eventually come back for her, and you know she gets in the car and they take off. Now, I don't know if anybody out there actually remembers the episode I'm talking about, but here's the scary part. That spirit, they found out later, was none other than Thelma Todd. She is said, and I'm not kidding, she's actually said to haunt the Hollywood sign. Because, what they said in that particular episode of My Ghost Story is that the reason she was haunting there is because she wanted people to remember who she was. Which kind of makes sense, but anyways, I thought that was, kind of a neat little tie-in there. But, people always act surprised when these people who died violent deaths are still hanging around. I'm not one of those people. First of all, as I've said on multiple occasions, I'm Native American. I just believe spirits are part of the natural world. There's nothing to be afraid of in the first place. I don't care how scary it is. Because to me, it's just not scary at all. But, that's me. But it is also no surprise to me that people that die violent deaths, particularly murders, would stick around. You would think that they would, especially if it's an unsolved case. I cannot wait for the day that I can go to Hollywood and meet the ghost of Elizabeth Short. I bet she has a lot to say. And of course she's going to be around. These people are going to be around until the people who killed them are found out. Until they're found out and they pay for their crime. It is no surprise to me. Oh God, I there's something I gotta look up and see if I can look up and share with you guys because this one truly did rock me. Um, I was like 8, 9 years old at the time, and we were actually in San Diego. We didn't live there yet. We didn't move there until years later, but we would go there quite a bit. Um, but I remember this. I believe I was about 9 years old, if I'm not mistaken. But I definitely remember this. Seeing this on the news. Let's see. She did it. Looking for the thing on it, but I know I know that he was killed in one of my all-time favorite places, and I'm trying to find something on it because I can't for the life of me remember the gentleman's name, but I know what TV show he used to be in. Um, Hold on 1 second. Oh yes, here we go. Peter Duell was a famous actor in like the late '60s, early '70s. He was most famous for his portrayal of uh, in the Western TV series Alias Smith and Jones, and this kind of rocked me a little bit too. And the reason why is because oh wait, no, it wasn't him. It was a different actor. Okay. Oh wait, I think I no, but he was murdered too. Peter Joel was murdered, and then no, the one I'm talking about, there was an actor, and I remember this story so well. Can't you tell? um, But this actor was murdered in Balboa Park in San Diego. And I don't remember a lot about the case. Let's see, where is it? Here it is. David Huffman. That's who it was. No, Peter Dill rocked me too because I loved that show. But this one was just, it was brutal. Uh, San Diego, a 16-year-old high school student uh, actually murdered this actor David Huffman, who was there at the Balboa Park. In Balboa Park, just to explain a little bit, houses an exact replica of the Globe Theater that was built by William Shakespeare, and it's even called the Old Globe Theater. Uh, okay, Barb just brought up something in chat, and I I got to talk about it real quick, like because I've only got a few minutes left. But she says a good topic sometime in the future would be Bruce and Brandon Lee's deaths. Here's why I'm not going to do that for true crime, though. Uh, they weren't crimes, first of all. Brandon Lee's death during the making of the movie The Crow. And by the way, in my opinion, all the sequels to The Crow are bullshit because nobody can and should ever be the Crow except for Brandon Lee. Period. Um, just my opinion. But his death was completely accidental. Here's what everyone blew it out of proportion, of course, because the supposed Lee family curse and all that BS. Here's the thing: there is no freaking curse. Okay, I don't know where that BS story came from, but there is no curse. This is what happened. And this happens. It's not like a gazillion to one thing. It does happen. He was actually killed. Brandon Lee, if you've seen the movie The Crow, you know the scene I'm talking about. He was actually killed in the pawn shop scene. And he was not killed by a quote unquote real bullet. What killed him was a defective blank. When the round went off, the gunpowder did not disperse like it should in a blank. Instead, what it did is it exploded the round inside the chamber and launched shrapnel out the barrel. And that shrapnel entered the abdomen of Brandon Lee just to the left side. And he passed away like 4 hours later. Okay, that's what killed Brandon. It was a complete accident. It was nobody's fault. If there was any fault at all, they would have arrested the pawn shop guy in the movie or the prop guy in the movie. There were no arrests made because it was a complete accident. To suggest anything else is complete hurtful bullshit. Okay. Now, on to one of my personal heroes and one of my, I guess you could say, muses for my life, because to be honest, I have studied martial arts since I was 4 years old. And he was a big influence on me as a child, Bruce Lee. I have heard a gazillion different stories about how he died, but I have researched it. And what annoys me is when people go, no, no, you're wrong. He was killed by the triads. No, 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 you're wrong. He was killed by a jealous lover, blah, blah, blah. No, he was not killed. If you don't believe me, ask his family. He died from a burst blood vessel in his brain, an aneurysm, natural cause of death. Could have happened to anyone. And keep in mind, this is one of the most profound martial artists of his time. He got hit in his head almost daily, even accidentally while making films. So to try and make it into more than it is, I believe personally, is insulting to the man. It is insulting to his family, and it's insulting to his culture. And anybody spreading those rumors, in my honest opinion, needs to shut the hell up. And by the way, Barb, I'm not saying that you're the one spreading rumors or anything. I don't want you to think that. It's one of those things I go off about. Especially since he was a big hero to me. He was the baddest man on the planet, but could not find a nicer guy if he tried. Um, it is not a secret. I guess it kind of is a secret to my audience, but I in my young years was kind of associated with Bruce Lee, um, and Chuck Norris. Uh, my stepfather's relative, let's say, is a man by the name of Bill Superfoot Wallace, who was best friends with Chuck Norris. And Chuck Norris is very close with Bruce Lee, and so I kind of knew them all. Um, and I didn't spend a lot of time with Bruce. I only met him like once when I was a child, but it had a profound effect on me. There are very few things in this life I'm as passionate about as the paranormal, the martial arts, and comedy. I know, interesting mix, but there it is. Yes, Barb said that is why I asked and you would know answers. Well, I don't know everything. I only know what I know, and I can only tell people my opinions, and I can't change anybody's mind, like I've said before in the show. All I can do is put what I believe out there, and hopefully maybe open people's mind. That's all I can hope to do, and if I succeed at that, then I have succeeded. But that's just how it is. So, anyways, I'm actually over my time for tonight. So I would like to say thank you all for tuning in. I wish you the happiest of holidays, happy Thanksgiving and all that stuff. I don't particularly celebrate it. Being Native American, that would kind of be like the Jews celebrating Holocaust. Doesn't happen. Um, so, I don't celebrate it personally, but I do love turkey as much as the next guy. Just saying. But as far as a holiday goes, I don't celebrate it. But anyhow, regardless of all that, happy holidays to everyone. Regardless of your background, or your religious beliefs, or whatever, uh, all are welcome on my show, as far as I'm concerned. So there it is. Happy holidays once again. Thank you for tuning in. Tune in next week. I'm hoping to have another guest on the show, even if I've got to call back Jose from HPI, which I want to do anyways. Just there are other people I want to get to first, but we'll see how that goes. But one way or the other, I do plan on having a guest next week. So thank you all for tuning in. I love you all. You're my family, my pack, my tribe, my listeners. Till next time, same bat time, same bat channel. Peace out, my pack.